They say the sea is the last great mystery on Earth, but that's not quite right. It's a mystery only because we lack the will and the funding to solve it. Everything, and I mean everything, can be understood if you just have the right tools, the right pressure gauges, the right sonar, the right light. Knowledge is a kind of armor. I've built my entire life on that single, simple principle, a fortress of observation and data against the chaos of the unknown. My name is Jules, and I hunt monsters for a living. Not the kind with horns and pitchforks, but the kind the pressure builds. I'm a marine biologist, and my very specific, very lonely little niche is abyssal gigantism. I study the things that grow to impossible sizes in the crushing dark, thousands of meters below the surface, where the water is a single degree above freezing and sunlight is a forgotten myth. Down there, the rules of biology bend. Squid grow as long as buses. Isopods become the size of dogs. It's a world of beautiful, terrifying mathematics, and I am one of its few obsessive accountants. I'm currently parked in the middle of the Pacific, floating over the Mariana Trench in a research vessel that smells of diesel, old coffee, and the faint, corrosive tang of salt. This tub, the Wanderer, is the only one that would have me and my French project. Below us is a gash in the planet's crust, so deep you could drop a mountain in it and still have a kilometer of water to spare. I'm here to prove a theory. Not my theory, but his, Dr. Eris Thorne. He believed that abyssal gigantism was just the beginning. He theorized that in the absolute deepest, most punishing parts of the trench, the Hadal Zone, there exist organisms on a scale for which we have no framework. Life that is not just big, but incomprehensibly vast. The scientific community called him a romantic, a crank. I called him my mentor. That's the professional reason I'm here, the one I put on the grant proposals. The real reason is a ghost story. Eris disappeared 10 years ago, right here, in this exact patch of indifferent blue water. He was on a solo dive in a submersible he designed himself, the Icarus. I was on the comms, a 26-year-old grad student hanging on his every word as he descended into the black. He was ecstatic, reporting pressure and temperature readings that were off the charts, life signs that made no sense. He described a field of bioluminescent flora that pulsed in a coordinated, rhythmic way he'd never seen before. He was laughing, his voice crackling with static and wonder, telling me we were about to change the world. And then he wasn't. There was no scream, no sound of metal groaning under pressure, just a sudden, sharp burst of static, like the universe itself had shrieked. The telemetry feeds went haywire, every sensor redlining at once. The hydrophones picked up a single, ultra-low frequency pulse that wasn't a whale, wasn't a geological event, wasn't anything on our charts. Then silence. The kind of profound, empty silence that feels louder than any noise. We searched for weeks. We found nothing. No debris, no oil slick, no ping from the emergency beacon. The official report cited a catastrophic hull failure, a tragic accident. But I saw the data before they sealed the records. You don't get readings like that from a crack in a viewport. You get them when something that has existed in the dark for millions of years, something ancient and vast and utterly oblivious, finally moves. My terror isn't of the dark, or the pressure, or the monsters that might live there. My terror is of insignificance. It's the soul-shredding fear that the universe doesn't just not care about you, it doesn't even know you exist. So tomorrow, I'm getting in my own submersible, the Orpheus. I'm going down to the same coordinates where Eris vanished. I'm going to find what he found. I have to. Because if I can measure it, if I can classify it, if I can just understand it, then he wasn't just erased. He was noticed. And I can live with that. I think. The descent was beautiful. For the first 9,000 meters, it was exactly what I had trained for, what I had dreamed of. My submersible, the Orpheus, performed flawlessly, a perfect little bubble of light and life against the encroaching dark. Through the thick acrylic viewport, I watched the world dissolve from azure to indigo to absolute black, cataloging the strange, elegant creatures that drifted past like ghosts in my floodlights. Cenophores trailed rainbow lights like living fiber optics, and giant jellyfish, their bells wider than I was tall, pulsed with a soft internal luminescence. I was in my element, my voice a calm, steady monologue into the mission recorder, logging every observation. Every data point, every new species logged was a victory. It was a vindication of Eris, of my entire life's work. The deep wasn't empty. It was majestic, serene, and it was finally yielding its secrets to me. I felt triumphant. I was documenting a particularly large bloom of the jellies, their gentle ballet, a soothing presence in the abyss, when it happened. It wasn't a sound at first. It was a feeling, a deep, resonant vibration that I felt in my teeth and the bones of my skull before my ears registered it. The water outside shimmered with the concussion. Then came a single, violent jolt. The Orpheus was thrown sideways as if swatted by an unseen hand, and my world became a chaotic mess of screaming alarms and flashing red lights. I was slammed against my restraints, the neat stacks of my equipment crashing to the floor in a shower of plastic and glass. Outside the viewport, the serene ballet of lights vanished, replaced by a swirling cloud of silt and panicked life. The main comms panel went dead with a final pathetic crackle. The power and data tether icon on my primary screen blinked yellow, then red, then went dark. Severed. I was alone, untethered, and falling through the deepest, darkest part of the world. After what felt like an eternity of spinning through the black, things stabilized. The emergency batteries kicked in, casting a low, grim red light through the cabin. I was adrift, but alive. My sonar was still active, and after a few frantic minutes of rebooting essential systems, it gave me a reading. Seafloor. 10,984 meters down. The numbers were a comfort, a piece of solid data in a world of chaos. I was falling, but I knew where the bottom was. The impact was surprisingly gentle, more of a soft settling than a crash, as if I'd landed on something yielding. For a long time, I just sat there listening to the hum of the life support and the frantic pounding of my own heart. The silence from the comms was absolute. No one was coming for me. But I was a scientist. Panic is a useless data point. I took a breath, steadied my hands, and turned on the external floodlights. The view outside was breathtaking. I had landed on a vast, flat plain, far flatter than any abyssal plain I'd ever seen mapped. It was covered in a thin layer of what looked like dark gray sediment, and stretching for kilometers in every direction were the fields of bioluminescent flora Ares had described. They weren't just pulsing randomly, they were moving in slow, coordinated waves of soft blue light, like a wind blowing across a field of ghostly grass. It was the most beautiful, alien thing I'd ever seen. My fear, the raw animal terror of the fall, began to recede, replaced by the familiar, intoxicating thrill of discovery. This was it. I had found his miracle. I was looking at a completely new ecosystem, maybe even a new form of life. But something was wrong. My gravimeter was giving me unstable readings, fluctuating in a slow, rhythmic way that made no sense. And the plane, it wasn't perfectly still. I focused my main camera on a ridge in the sediment a few hundred meters away, and I saw it shift. It was a slow, rhythmic movement, an undulation. The entire seafloor, this plain that stretched beyond the reach of my lights, was breathing. A deep, impossibly slow inhalation that took nearly a minute to complete, followed by an equally long exhalation. My mind, my logical, analytical mind, refused to accept what my eyes and instruments were telling me. It had to be a complex geothermal process, a super colony of microbes creating a chemical reaction that mimicked respiration. It had to be anything other than the truth. The alternative was a conclusion so massive, so paradigm-shattering, that my brain simply refused to compute it. I had to know. I powered up the external manipulator arm, my movements slow and deliberate, my heart a slow, heavy drum. If I could just get a sample of the sediment, of the rock underneath, I could analyze its composition. I could understand it. The metal claw extended from the sub, its small floodlight cutting a sharp, clinical beam through the dark. As it neared the surface, the rhythmic pulsing of the flora around me faltered, then stopped altogether. Everything went dark and still. The universe seemed to be holding its breath. The claw touched the ground, its pincers digging gently into the sediment, ready to close. The reaction was not geological. It was biological. The entire plain erupted in a blinding flash of golden light. Every single organism for kilometers in every direction flared in perfect, instantaneous synchrony. The light was so intense, it overloaded my cameras, but not before I saw what lay beneath the thin veil of silt. It wasn't rock. It was hide, a vast, wrinkled, ancient landscape of skin, scarred with craters and ravines so immense they could have been mountain ranges. The ground beneath me wasn't like it was breathing, it was breathing. I hadn't landed on the seafloor. I had landed on something that was living on it, something so colossal it had become the seafloor itself. My frantic hands flew across the controls, trying to fire the emergency thrusters, to do anything to get away, but it was too late. A current, powerful and inexorable, that caught me. It was pulling the Orpheus forward, dragging my tiny metal shell across the living continent of flesh. I was being drawn towards a new feature that was resolving out of the darkness ahead. It was a chasm, a swirling, miles-wide vortex of that same liquid golden light, a colossal, spiraling abyss in the flesh of the world. It was a geological feature on a planetary scale, and my mind screamed, trying to classify it. A siphonophore on a planetary scale? A mouth? A wound? As I was pulled closer, the light from the abyss grew, illuminating the true, mind-breaking topography of the creature. I was a single bacterium on the skin of a whale, and this whale was the size of a tectonic plate. The sheer, crushing scale of it annihilated every theory ever held, every metric I had ever used, my life's work, my obsessive need to classify what's a child's stamp collection in the face of the cosmos. And then I realized with a final, soul-shattering certainty that the chasm wasn't a mouth. And it wasn't a wound. The swirling light within it was coalescing, forming a structure of impossible complexity and size. It was an eye inside an iris, inside a sclera the size of a country. It was an eye, and it was beginning to open. The moment of perception was not violent. It was silent, absolute, and total. As the great eye focused, the current pulling me forward ceased. I was simply held, suspended in the water a few kilometers from a celestial body made of living tissue. The golden light that emanated from it was not like the light from my flood lamps, a simple projection of photons. This light was information. It passed through the hull of the Orpheus as if it were glass, as if it weren't there at all. It passed through me. I did not see images or hear sounds. Instead, my mind, my consciousness, was flooded with a sudden, devastating understanding. The creature was not hostile. It was not even truly aware of me in any way I could comprehend. My existence, my submersible, my entire species, was a phenomenon so fleeting, so infinitesimally small, that it barely registered. The being perceived me not as a life form, but as a momentary, complex chemical reaction in the liquid that surrounded it, no more significant than a single salt crystal dissolving in the ocean. Eris Thorne's disappearance, the severing of my tether, they weren't attacks. They were the equivalent of a human blinking, a microscopic, unconscious twitch of an eyelid causing a ripple in the water that had erased him from existence. My mind, the fortress I had built from data and logic, was dismantled not by force, but by perspective. The knowledge I had sought my entire life, the armor I had so carefully constructed, was a paper shield against a supernova. The creature's consciousness was a universe of its own. I felt the slow, deliberate thoughts of eons, the awareness of gravity and dark matter, the patient observation of galaxies being born and dying. It was a being that did not live in the ocean. The ocean was a temporary condition of a planet it inhabited. My instruments were useless. My life's work was a footnote to a footnote in a language that had not yet been invented. My terror of insignificance was not a fear, it was the fundamental truth of the universe. I had come down here to measure a monster, and I had found God. And God, in its infinite placid existence, had not even noticed me. The emergency lights in the Orpheus flickered and died. The hum of the life support faded. My last breath misted the cold acrylic of the viewport. I was a scientist to the end, my final useless data point, my own life, a brief spark of electrical activity, being calmly, passively, and utterly comprehended into nothing. I had wanted to solve the mystery, and the answer was that I was not, and had never been, a part of the equation.
There are more scares to share. Press the like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single terrifying moment. You're helping me investigate the deepest, darkest corners to bring you stories that haunt your dreams.